Hey guys, this is Rob Shaver, and this is Spark to Flame, where I bring you ideas, insights, and inspiration for better marriages. I've been working on a video about Queen Esther and some of the wisdom we can glean from her experiences and having to talk to her husband, King Xerxes, about some really difficult things. And a conversation that for her could have led to death. And if it didn't go well, the death of all of her people. So some pretty serious consequences there. And in our marriages, we're often having to talk to our spouses about difficult things. Thankfully, not to that level of death. So if you have a difficult conversation that you need to have with your spouse, here's a couple of things that you should do. You should follow her example of what she did before she even had the conversation. Very easy things to apply in our lives when we think about the conversations that we need to have. Here's some ways that we handle those situations inappropriately. And the first one, you could probably guess it, is that we avoid, right? We avoid, avoid, avoid. I did not want to have this conversation, so I'm going to put it off, and I'm going to put it off, and I'm going to put it off. And then the other thing where we can really go wrong in these conversations is when we talk to other people first, too much and in harmful ways. So, part of our solution, some of the good things that we're going to see, does involve having other people as a part of the conversation, but we want them to be supportive. We don't want to be gossiping with other people, and we don't want it to be that when we share something with our spouse, they find out later that 14 other people already know. Like there's something you need to confess, but they're the last person to hear about it. Or there's some problem that you have with them, and they're the last person to hear about it. And so we don't want that coming back on them. So definitely another way that we can go wrong in addressing difficult situations is that we talk to too many people before we actually talk with our spouse about it. What about some good ways to handle it? Well, I mentioned we're going to get some advice from an ancient queen, and that queen, her name is Esther, and you can find her in the Bible. She's got a book of the Bible named after her, Esther, and it's a beautiful story, a wonderful story. But the part that we're getting at is actually where she finds out that her people are going to be slaughtered, basically. This guy just his name's Haman, and he hates the Jews. He wants to eliminate the Jews, and he's like the king's right hand man. And so he says, "Give me permission to just go and kill all these people." And the king agrees to that. And so she needs to approach the king and say, "Please, these are my people. Will you spare us? Will you allow us to live?" Because this is a very difficult conversation for her because she's not yet revealed to him who her people are. That's part of it. But also, just her coming to the king without announcement, without invitation from him, is risky. If he does not approve of her and her coming to him, he could have her killed. It's just how it was back then, what the laws of their land were. And so there's risk involved there. So a very difficult conversation. Actually checks several of the care boxes. She needs to confess who she is and where she's from. She needs to address a situation, and it's also a request that she needs to make for him to come through for her, and and addressing a part of a situation of that he's involved in. He's complicit in signing an edict that's going to allow all these people to be killed. All right, so that's her story. What can we glean? What kind of wisdom can we gain from Queen Esther? All right, so here's the things that she did right. One, she committed to it. This is a long process of her actually kind of going through with it. She does approach the king. She puts on her royal robes. He's pleased with her. He accepts her and he invites her in. And then instead of just going right up and asking, "This is what I want, this is what I need," she says, "Well, let's have a banquet first," and then that leads to another banquet, and that leads to another banquet, and then that leads to the actual request. But what she does well in the beginning is she is committed to it. It's a very hard thing. It's a difficult thing. She knows it's going to be a tough conversation. And even though it takes her a while to get to it, she's committed. So that'd be the opposite of avoiding. She knows that she needs to have the conversation. She's going to be committed. And in her commitment, she immediately recruits support. So she agrees and she tells Mordecai, who is her guardian, she says to him, "Look, I'm going to do this, but I need you to do something for me. Go and rally the troops, get all these people, all the Jews in Susa, and have them fast and pray for me for 3 days, and then I'm going to go do this." Now, obviously, her situation is different from ours. we're usually not, hopefully you're not risking death when you go talk to your spouse, and that would be a conversation that maybe you do want to avoid. But also, this was not just her own livelihood, but for her whole people. There was a lot of weight to this conversation, which may not be involved with you, but it could be. So recruiting people, but not just to tell them the story, not just to get their advice, but to say, will you fast for me? Will you pray for me? And not just for me, but with me. So she's committed. She gets a group of people to support her, and so for us, it's praying for wisdom, that I can have the right words and the right timing, and praying for them, the person that's going to be receiving and hearing this, that they'll be receptive and understanding. So to recap, two of the things that we can do wrong when we are entering into difficult conversations is that we can avoid them altogether, and in avoiding them, we can actually talk to the wrong people about them, or talk to too many people about them who aren't our spouse. Esther does the opposite. She doesn't avoid it. She commits to it. She puts a lot of investment on the front end into the conversation. She talks to other people, but she talks to the right people in the right way to get their support and to get them praying for her. She doesn't need to go into specifics. She doesn't need to get their advice. She just needs them to be on her side and be a support system for her. So those are two things that we can learn when we're entering into difficult conversations of our own, that we can be committed to it, and that we can get ourselves some supporters, people who would even fast and pray for us. So that's today's spark, and may your sparks turn to flames.